I'm Jimmy, one of the many people that are bringing Plug to life right here in this beautiful city of Los Angeles. And I'm not going to force any of you to listen to me talk for too long. I'm just going to take you through a little bit of story time that goes back 40 years ago. And 40 years ago in San Jose, California, there is this little startup called Test Point One Incorporated. And this was where I got my first taste of the startup experience. And that's because pictured on the left here is my father, Bruce Scott Douglas, somewhere at a trade show hawking this device called the AccuProbe that him and his business partner on the right, Chet, had invented. This was a tried and true Silicon Valley story. They started the company in their garage. They would complete sales with their dogs running around to some of the greats of Silicon Valley at the time in the late 70s. And over time, they built it into not just a growing startup of over 100 people in the Valley, but a bit of a family business. So my father, who dresses the exact same way that I do when I show up at work every day, not pictured as the cigarette he was almost definitely smoking when this photo was also taken, because you know, the 70s, was a Vietnam veteran. He was a graduate of the prestigious, not so prestigious, DeVry, and had moved to California from the Midwest where he was born with a dream like many of us, and formed the business building a device that tested printed circuit boards, very quintessential Silicon Valley at the time. And then the least productive employee in the entire place was this one right here. In the office, by the way, every birthday party that I recall from that period of time, obviously. So apologies to Luca in advance, but at least our office has windows. Not so much I can say about this one. Parlaying all of that life experience, growing up into a startup environment where chaos was kind of the norm, it makes perfect sense that I landed at Tesla in 2018. And pictured here is myself with a few of my friends during the peak chaos of that year, where we were finding every opportunity to find a profit. The greatest thing that I learned from that experience was that most of the constraints that we put in front of us when we want to take something on that seems kind of impossible is manufactured in our minds. And only when you find yourself in a position where either because the company might fold or because you might get fired, until you're around that level of pressure to really force yourself to figure it out, you probably haven't exhausted every option. So my time at Tesla was definitely the most special in my career prior to founding Plug. But the truth was that my entire life, having grown up in that entrepreneurial environment, it was really my biggest career aspiration. But those of you who've known me for a long time know that my father passed away pretty suddenly when I was 16 in the middle of another entrepreneurial sprint. And that obviously left me with a lot of trauma, but also thrusted me into a bit of risk aversion and a little bit of self-manufactured constraint around what's possible if I try. The experience at Tesla will make you believe that you are capable of anything, especially if you're doing it with the right team. And after getting my feet underneath me and after meeting my son for the first time, I realized that the greatest gift that I had received from my family was that experience, watching something get built from nothing into something and realizing that we can do whatever we want. So I set my sights on the extremely glamorous used electric vehicle market. I'm sure all of you wake up thinking about that every day too. At the time, a few years ago, it represented about 1% of the used car market, practically nothing. And several people who are here tonight and myself in partnership were running, at the time, what was the largest used electric vehicle operation in the world. And in fact, I actually ran the numbers the other day. It still is. We found a lot of problems, and we were a very underappreciated class of citizen in the automotive ecosystem. At the core, an electric vehicle is a fundamentally different asset than a combustion vehicle, so we shouldn't buy and sell them like they're the same. But when you're at the very, very left of this chart and you're representing less than 1% of the market, the industry is not conforming to you, no matter how prestigious you think your brand is or how famous you think your CEO is. Meanwhile, there's problems up ahead. The way that an electric vehicle should be evaluated or appraised is based on a totally different set of factors, and this becomes more true the deeper we get into the world of the software-defined and battery-defined vehicle. And even in our humble operation a few years ago, we were seeing it play out. There was so much potential for the used Tesla product and the used EV product overall in the broader market, but the reality is that the equation around residual value and dealer participation and understanding around how to educate customers, let alone the retail body, was totally out of balance. You see it in data all over the place, but in particular, most acutely, everybody's favorite topic, residual values. Electric vehicle residual values are not just underperforming expectations, they are by far the worst performing asset class in the automotive industry. Why is that? We can debate it all we want. Some people will tell you because EVs will catch on fire and burn your house down. Some will tell you it's because there's nowhere to charge them. Some will tell you that the battery is only going to last 10,000 miles and then cost $1 million to replace. There's a lot of hot garbage narrative going on out there. And there are legitimate reasons why residual values are feeling a crunch, and I won't bore you with all of them. Residual values are a calculation of wholesale competition, and who competes for vehicles in wholesale? It's dealers. There's a lot going on in this chart, but let's focus on the EV expert dealers really quick, all the way to the right. In order to be considered, by our math, an expert used electric vehicle dealer, you don't really need that many. You don't have to be that deep, and that's because it's just not that deep of an industry right now. If you have 10 or more EVs in stock, you are likely part of this cohort that's selling a third of the entire market and turning them twice as fast as everybody else. And there's less than 600 of those rooftops represented on the right. Meanwhile, the majority of dealers, all the way on the left, 59% of them, don't touch used EVs at all. So what do we do about it? There are a lot of business models throughout the ideation, and we thought to ourselves, who do we serve? Everybody that's in this market right now is still an early adopter, but in order for the EV market to remain healthy, the secondary market needs to become balanced and get healthy. So we need to bring more dealers into the fold and get beyond the chasm. So we looked to the wholesale auction. The reason we looked at it this way was because it was an opportunity to leverage the fact that a software-defined and battery-defined vehicle is a computer on wheels. We can put certainty into every transaction. We can gather perfectly accurate data around EV specifics, such as the battery, the software-enabled features, the charging network access, the tax credit qualification, everything that's required to properly transact in one of these, and demystify it so that any dealer can find it approachable. So that's what we started with. I left Tesla on March 21st, 2023. I tweeted this the next day. It was my first day as Plug's CEO, and at that point in time, it was myself and absolutely nothing else. Eventually, a bank account with some money in it a few days later. Thank goodness. Saul Dietgera, he's in here somewhere. There he is. He's just as tall in real life as he is in this photo. First person to say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I should do that with my career next. So hats off to Saul, Plug's chief technology officer, exited CTO in our lead investor's portfolio of north of $100 million, has been the first engineer at several startups, being the master of finding product market fit, and is really comfortable saying no to me, which I thought to myself, that sounds perfect. And pictured here is the first time we did a customer visit at a Polestar store in Marin, and we thought to ourselves, we should drive one of these. We've never done it before. And that kickstarted our first dealer onboardings and our first auction, and eventually a hiring spree of 2 more people. We don't usually sit this close to each other, but Tien, sandwiched in between the two of us, was at the auto show with us driving around in a Bronco over some giant rocks. But very shortly before, we'd met him over dinner and convinced him that running remarketing across North America at VinFast is pretty cool, but standing up the operation inside of Plug, a 2-person company with nothing but a bank account and a couple of dealers, is a better idea. So he said, yeah, sure. And then finally, Susan O'Rourke, pictured standing next to me in that very room about a year ago, wondering what on earth she had just done, moving her entire existence to Los Angeles, having previously been one of the first 20 hires at ACV Auction and opening up over 50 of their markets before she stopped counting. And that was enough to get going. We crammed ourselves inside of this tiny glass box in Culver City in a WeWork. I think it's meant for 2, maybe 3 people. I think we maxed out at 6, really comfortable. Luckily for everybody that shared the office with me, as I talk really nice and quietly. And we managed to jam out the first version of our auction in that very room, and it looked like this. And I know what you're thinking. I don't remember a time where a Model 3 sold for $32,000. But you want to know what's funny? That was last year. A lot's happened. It's not our very, very first auction. It's just that the very first auctions we ran, nobody has a record of them actually existing anymore because that code was long thrown away. But what this does represent is the Q4 beta, where following the announcement of our company, we had a goal to launch in Q4 of 2023. And we did. We sold exactly one car. And here's what the auction looks like today. It's kind of the same, except instead of one car to 2 or 3 dealers, we've now sold over $16 million worth of EVs to a network of over 400 dealers. And I'll pat myself on the back saying I signed up the first 30, and all Susan and team had to do was sign up the remaining 370 or so. So thank you to Susan and James and Martin and Blake and everyone that has participated in getting more dealers into the fold. We appreciate you. Fun fact about dealers that buy EVs on Plug, they're an equal mix of franchise dealers and independent dealers. About 60% of the buying is coming from franchise dealers, and half of these vehicles move across state lines when they sell, to the tune of 800 miles on average, which is kind of nuts. The one car in December marked our success of not lying to ourselves that we would launch a beta in Q4. But over the course of last year, we sold through our first $10 million of EVs. And last quarter, we sold $5 million worth. And the good news that I've shared with the team is the pressure is on. Now all we need to do is roughly 10x that number before this year ends. And we're going to find a way. We recently announced our seed funding. Our round was initially led by Floodgate out of Menlo Park, California. We received a term sheet from them, signed on A-Star, Autotech Ventures, a handful of angel investors, including the godfather of online vehicle marketplaces, Simon Rothman, and car dealership guy, who most people here are probably familiar with, and John Kett, who is the former CEO of IAA. This is what got us off the ground, and it's continued to fuel us through our iterations in pursuit of product market fit. And we're really grateful for these capital partners. So thank you to everybody that's been involved, including those who are not mentioned here, which is 44 of our closest friends in a roll-up vehicle that's also on the cap table, many of whom are represented here tonight. We launched Trade Desk. How does Trade Desk work? If you're trading in your EV to a Toyota dealer or a BMW dealer or any dealer that doesn't happen to specialize in, let's say, the Tesla you're trading in, or the Lucid you're trading in, or the Rivian you're trading in, a very sophisticated algorithm called Susan O'Rourke will put a number on that vehicle, and we put cash behind it and help the dealer get that car deal done. She's got a QR code right there, everyone, just in case any of you happen to represent a dealer. You get the deal done, we become the owner of the car, we sell it in our auction the next day. It's working. Week by week, ever since we launched it, we found that the Trade Desk flow has become particularly sticky amongst dealers. A dealer that uses Trade Desk is 50% likely to use it again, and then 50% likely to use it again, and then 50% likely to use it again. In all likelihood, this is the model that's going to take us to the Series A capital raise. So we are throwing a whole lot of weight at it, including expanding our leadership team, having very recently brought Lauren Van Dyke on board. And thank you, Lauren. Lauren, for those of you who don't know, worked very closely with myself and Tien at Tesla for several years, and having most recently run 2 multi-billion-dollar P&Ls at the same time, used cars and internal fleet. We finally got a real office. It's in Santa Monica on Ocean Park Boulevard. Feel free to come through. It's kind of like the glass box that we had, only like 6 of them stacked up together, a little bit roomier. And my son, who hopefully had an opportunity to meet very recently, is a lot more productive than I ever was. I certainly was never caught dead anywhere near a keyboard in my father's office. Nor did I look that cute. We're generating revenue. We have the right team in the right seats. We have hundreds of dealers, and we can very reliably convert electric vehicles into cash better than any team in the world, and I'll stand behind that. So without further ado,